This is a really good show. I like this. This is the kind of stuff, the kind of history they don't teach you.
You will see the guy standing like this. Never fall.
The way the drugs currently used in South Africa would be unrecognizable to the American users of the 1970s. Americans recall Quaalude with a rosy nostalgia, a drug sold by pharmaceutical companies as a non-addictive alternative to barbiturates. It was a relaxing drug, a love drug that promoted dance and uninhibited sexuality. But it became too popular for its own good, and restrictions on sale and prescription were soon followed by total prohibition in the United States. Prohibition rarely dissuades drug use or manufacture, but methaqualone was a rare case. The high dose required for users to achieve a desirable effect placed an extraordinary burden on clandestine manufacturers, who needed large quantities of carefully watched precursor chemicals in order to turn a small profit. Some people believe the enduring popularity of methaqualone in South Africa is a result of trade sanctions imposed on the apartheid regime, which left the country in a state of economic and cultural isolation. Others believe it was a product of secret government experiments. Have any of you all heard of Wouter Besson?
What?
Wouter Besson?
It's a drug or it's a what?
He was a... claims to have weaponized street drugs like MDMA, LSD, and most prominently, Mandrax. Besson claims to have weaponized street drugs like MDMA, LSD, and most prominently, Mandrax. He planned to use these drugs for crowd control purposes in the event of an anti-apartheid uprising. Yet the exact nature of Besson's crowd control technique remains uncertain. Talk to you later. Thanks a lot. I appreciate your time. It's great meeting you. Thanks a lot.
So, well, that pretty much explained what I was talking about earlier. That's the reason why the illegality came into picture, is because you have one government on one hand, then you have another government coming in on the other, and they just do the opposite because that's what the other one was doing. This is what I use. I know you said that that stuff made you feel bad, but you don't have to go there. You can get it wherever. It's just Hypericum perforatum. It's a very simple... Did I accidentally zoom this? Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. There's one way you can tell the purity of Hypericum perforatum. I don't know if that's fake or not, but it seems to work because it seems to work across multiple variants of the plant. You put a little bit of this in alcohol. You don't need ethanol to do it, but you know, you can drink it afterwards if you use ethanol. Not that ethanol is good for you. You just regular isopropyl. Take isopropyl alcohol. You put some of the plant in there, and I would open this, but it's kind of hard to do it, so I'm going to put it down. It smells a lot like when I was a kid and I went on a farm. It smells like freshly cut hay. That's what it smells like. It's just ground up. If you put this in alcohol, which, you know, I probably can do that. Give me a second. Just to show you. I forgot how long the reaction takes, but... as you can see, it's just a brown substance. So I just used some alcohol with it. It'll create an azeotrope and it'll turn red. It should turn red. That's how you know if you got good quality St. John's wort. And St. John's wort is an MOAI. It's a mono oxidase inhibitor. Monoamine oxidase inhibitor. And what it works exactly like a it's almost identical to the operations of many of the antidepressants today, but it comes straight from nature. I don't know if you can see that, but it's starting to turn a little red. And the longer you let it set, the more red it will turn. This particular one that I got it's been washed, but if you look at it now, if I filtered the water off, the alcohol, there would be like a red salve that would evaporate in there. This stuff works. It always has worked for me. There's two problems with it. One, you gotta stay away from the cheese. It works really good for helping with pain. This way, St. John's wort. I usually just put it in a pill form and take it with some food. And you only want to take it in the morning because it will keep you up all night. So, I don't know how well this phone does with color, but the alcohol turns red, a red color. You've got, where's my flashlight? There it is. Got good quality St. John's wort. And okay, there's two things you got to watch out for when you're taking St. John's wort: is sun exposure. You're going to be really sensitive to sun exposure. The best St. John's wort is fresh, but you're going to find it hard to find, especially here. They consider it a weed, but that's kind of funny because they consider it a weed, yet it is the backbone of the entire pharmaceuticals industry. And it came from this plant. This was all the antidepressants were born out of this plant. It came from the Hypericum. Most of the stuff now is just synthesized into something a little different. They call them carriers. They'll attach it to a carrier molecule and then they'll patent it. And then they'll make the drug or the plant illegal. They couldn't make this one illegal because of a ruling that they had, like post. But it is turning red. I don't know if you can see that. That was brown, but now it's red. It's like a red-brown. Here's red-red. As you can see, it's sort of a rust color now. And there's a red, like pigment floating off of it. The longer you let it set, the more red it should get. But there's probably easier ways to test that. It's just, you know, when your information source is filtered, you don't really find good ways. So, it can cause skin cancer if you're taking this in high doses and you are out in UV. Like if you're out at the beach 10 hours a day and you're taking St. John's wort, that's not a good thing. You don't want to mix those two together. You need to cover up your skin. You need to put on sunblock. And it doesn't matter what race you are, because it's not the melatonin that's the problem. It's the UV rays hitting I forgot. It's been so long. I did this study and I wrote this huge paper on it. There's part of the Hypericum, it transposes into the skin. When the UV light hits the skin, it causes a reaction in the skin cell, and it causes, it's like the way that they do genetic experiments is they use a jolt of electricity to zap the DNA that they've prepared. They zap the DNA into an empty cell. So they extract the DNA out of the cell, and then they use electricity to zap some DNA back into it. The same thing happens on your skin, only what happens is it zaps a part of the chemical hypericum into the skin cell, and it causes it to mutate, which is the reason why it's dangerous. In high doses. In very low doses, your body can easily take care of it. And the other effect is the cheese effect, because it is an antidepressant. So, and it works good, like I said. I've used it for a long time. Just if you plan on going to the beach, yeah, we're getting a lot redder now. If you're going to the beach, you don't want to take this. It's not safe if you're getting massive amounts of sun exposure. And if you're getting massive amounts of sun exposure anyway, you're probably not going to need this. This is for like the winter time, or when you can't go to the beach, you know. If you're like part of the regular working class in this country, you only get 1 week out of an entire year to do anything. So it's, hey, you know, 2 weeks out of the year, you just stop taking it. There you go. As you can see, I don't know if it's getting redder or not, but that's how you tell if it's good quality or not. Normally it should turn bright red. So this is probably like something that somebody mowed out and just took mixed up with all kinds of grasses and stuff. It's probably not 100% pure. But the stuff that we get sold is usually the garbage of the rest of the world. There's not much I can do about that. But, you know, watching that video, it explains what I said, which is that it was weaponized. And that's the reason why it remains illegal today. The enforcement agencies of all the different countries they have one specific goal, and that is to put competition out of business. And that's what it's about. The reason why I did my research is because of what hit the news. Is I was looking at, okay, so how do you fix the problem? Because that's how I look at everything in life. Like, you know, like, how do you fix the problem? How do you change a core valve on an air conditioner without releasing all the gas? Well, it's simple. You buy the right tool. It keeps the pressure in there. You take the core out. I like solving problems because there are a lot of them. There's a song, Everything's Broken, which is pretty much true. What it is oh my God, I had one of those I can't remember anything moments. You have two different branches of the government, right? And it's just like this case proves that when one government fell, all their documents became public. And then when they tried to look through those documents and they tried to figure out what was going on, they ran into huge amounts of dead end. Because the guy that was supposed to be doing all the biological research for the weapons was basically using it as a 70s disco party for his own personal use. That's pretty much what it amounted to. And but to this day, nothing can be proven, as usual. You know, they keep the stuff off the books. They're supposed to be. But it's just like every other country. What happened is you had these two different factions that were vying for control. And then eventually when one got in control, they made sure that everything just ran as usual, as business. Is it business or war? That's a good question. War and business are very closely linked. How are they linked is the financials. And when you understand that people are always going to use, or they're going to find chemicals out to make themselves feel a certain way, or they're going to find pharmaceuticals that are legal or not legal, doesn't really make a difference. I mean, you need what you need. You need it. You have a limited time on this earth. It's just a couple of clicks on the watch and you're gone. That's it. It's gone. Party over. So people, they seek out things to make their stay here, even though it's temporary, a little more easier to bear. And that's what they made a business model out of. And nowhere else in the entire world than here in this country has it been more hideous to watch the unfolding of prohibition. Even though prohibition was completely proven to be completely useless, and all it did was create an unregulated black market or an unregulated clandestine market. An unregulated market is the key there. The word is unregulated. It means that it's not beholden to any rules of society for quality, for any damages done. So if you look at it like, okay, here's their market here and here's a market there. This market is going to make this amount of money no matter what. $300 million are going to be spent every year in this market. It doesn't matter how much you spend on it. We're currently at the 40 billion mark in our enforcement. We're at 40 billion to control 300 million worth of spending. And over the period of 10 years, and you can even go back as far as 20 years ago, it hasn't made a difference at all in the amount that we're spending per year. That is fact. 100% fact. Now, the thing they don't tell you about the secrets and the lies is who's actually making the money on that 400 million that's spent every year in this country on illicit substances. That's the little secret that would make a blockbuster movie, if you ever want to know the truth. What I find interesting is the link between the lobbying money and the money that's spent, because the money that's spent on drugs mirrors the amount of money that's being lobbied by pharmaceutical companies. How is that for a strange but obvious link to something? So you have the market over here that's completely, it's not responsible for the damages that it does. So we'll say that this market over here is not liable for anything. So if somebody takes something that's tainted and they get neurological damage to their body, and there's no one that's accountable for it. No one is accountable for anything that happens on this side of the industry. Over here on this side of the industry, the people are held accountable. But it's business as usual. So, you know, we'll bribe the judges, we'll bribe the lawyers, everyone will turn their heads, and as long as money's being made. But every now and then, a case that is so obvious that no one can deny it slips into court, and they say, yeah, we can't deny this. So damages get awarded. So over here, you have some liability. You have some quality control. If they sold aspirin that killed people, those people would have recourse to come to those companies and say, listen, you fucked up. You messed up. You did a bad job. And get some damages out of it and have their life corrected or have their family taken care of. Whereas in this market over here, nothing. Not a thing. There's no control whatsoever. It just gets spent on enforcement. And 100 times the amount, 100 times plus the amount is spent on enforcement. And when you look at the culture about military and enforcement type cultures, they all would drill it into your head about one thing, that there's the weak and the strong, and the weak behave this way and the strong behave that way. It's a methodology, and it's always indoctrinated in its people. Most of the people are smart enough. They rise above it and they figure out the bullshit. They know it's bullshit. They know it's something that's fed to them, and they realize it at the end of the road. But if you look at this at the real root of the problem, which is that you have two different markets that are completely separate from each other. One has liability, the other does not. How do you make one market liable? That is, you legitimize the market. That is the only way to do it. If you look throughout history, you have to understand the legitimization of the market forces the market to move forward with non-damaging stuff. So look at the first car, the Model T car that was made. Look at the safety record of what happened throughout the years to the Model T. Now, you're going to say that you can't compare drug usage to a car, but this is the same in every single industry. Every tool that's made, that's manufactured, every tool has been improved for safety, like putting insulation on the outside so when you cut a wire, it doesn't blow your hands off. Everything has been improved because of the recorded evidence of something not being safe. Now, today we live in a society where that's gone bananas. Like, it's gone crazy. The safety crew has gone, absolutely bonkers. And it's because of the money. The money has corrupted the safety industry in this country. I needed a little quiet. It needs to be quiet for me to speak. So, safety industry has gone bonkers in this country, and it's true. The EPA is just absolutely... The people that get the funding in the EPA are like the top 2%, and then the rest of them, even though they all have doctorates, are basically stuffed into little cubicles with crappy... I guess they don't know that their life's work is being used as a weapon. The EPA is basically used as a weapon, just like drugs were used as a weapon. Weaponized, basically. So you make this market legitimate, you make that market legitimate, what happens? Just like in every other business model, it's forced to move forward. And it can't move forward if it's not ever held liable. If someone can't say, this drug does this to people, they're not ever going to make a different one. They're not ever going to move forward with it. And that's the problem that's happened. That's what's been caused by delegitimizing this market. Is you've taken it so that it's never, ever, ever going to be legitimized. It's never going to move forward. It's always going to be out of the public's view. And the only one that's going to be legitimized is this industry over here that can only legitimize things that are synthesized, heavily synthesized in a way that is extremely difficult to make, so they can copyright it. What's weird about that, though, is when you look back at the newspapers from the 1800s, when they first started national printing, you'll find that the drug section is right after, or I would say, the pharmaceutical section was always right before the legal section. The two were right next to each other. And I think historically, there was no mistaking why they did that. I mean, they knew even back in the 1800s, when they had just started building the railroads, trying to complete the railroad circuits all across the country, and they just started publishing national newspapers. They already knew the connection, and they were making a business model out of it. And now we're at the end of that business model. And so that's what's happened. Every year they keep making new safety features on things. And sadly it's gotten to the point now where a judicial committee sits and they say, okay, what should we ban this year? And they go, we need to ban this because someone could fall on it and poke their eye out, and it needs to be a different shape. And everyone on the board owns stock in the new company that's going to be made, that this would be the only thing that will be sold in the store. And that's what it revolves around, is the laws are now becoming a force for the economic force of it, which it just justifies what I've said all along, is that justice was the economic force behind it to begin with. Whether the market was legitimate or illegitimate, the economic force behind it was what was pushing it to begin with. And ultimately what you get is you get corruption at the end of it. You get a market that has no justification at all, because it's all just done for financial reasons, not safety. We're now at that end of that type of model system. And the only way you can get out of it is just to understand how we've got here. Understand the safety mechanisms that have been put in place from the beginning of the systems that are liable, or that are put in a courtroom where people can make claims against it, and things have to be proven, whereas another system isn't. And that money from that system has kept it off the market. So what you have today, well, let me put it this way. I'm not really good at speaking when I'm really tired. But I looked at a thing about the opiate addiction, and it had a little article about a woman who basically used an intravenous needle, and she got a staph infection and died. And they were saying that she died from an opiate addiction. Did she die from an opiate addiction, or did she die from a lack of antibiotics? She died from lack of access to antibiotics is what she died from. Okay. And she also died from lack of alternative, safer drugs. And that's the final conclusion on those two. If there's no liability in a market, no one is responsible for it, so nobody is forced to change it. So it remains the same, and the damage that it does is never accounted. Whereas the other market, the end of it is kind of the same as what happens here, is everyone gets bribed to the point where it becomes a point where everyone just looks the other way, and then there's this huge settlement at the end, because eventually the lies can't hold forever and the bow breaks, as they would say. So at least you have a resolution in one market, whereas in another market you'll never have a resolution. But that's how I see things, and it'll probably remain that way forever. It's never going to change. And of course, you already know that, right? I think everybody knows it because it's common sense. They just don't teach it. They don't teach it in the schools.